show started. Okay, I am here with Joe Cornet and Tatiana Neva, and we are here to talk about The Wide West. It's now playing on Xumo Play, and I had a blast watching this movie. And you two are great in this movie, hands down. I just talked with Alexander and Nick last week or a week or two ago, and telling them how much I enjoyed the movie. So I'm glad I get to talk to you guys about it now.
Thank you. We
Thank you so
appreciate it,
much.
Albert.
So what inspired you to do the story of the sumo delegation in the Wide West? Where did this all come from?
Well, the genesis of the whole thing came together between uh, Andrew Freund, who is also our producer and one of our uh, coordinators for the fights in the movie, and he is the director of the correct me, Tatiana, if I don't get the full title, the Sumo Association of North America. Is that correct?
USA Sumo.
USA Sumo.
Mhm.
And he has known Alexander for 25 years. And
Yeah.
they got to talking one afternoon about just things in general. And the conversation turned to our two champions, Hiroki and Ichi, who are in the film. And that's when Alex sort of had one of his brainstorms, and he said, well, what if we combined these elements, including maybe some martial arts moves by another actor, into the Western context? And Andrew thought it was a good idea. And the next thing I knew, our Craig Hammond, our great writer, started cranking out the script. There was input from Andrew on some of the protocol of the sumo match, and the tradition and the rules and everything of doing one of those things. And then we got Kaz Kobayashi, who plays their manager. Yeah, and he's great in it. And I encourage you to look at him because he's got a couple of great sword fights that are just badass. And that's really how it developed. And I got to tell you, it was one of those things. And Tatiana will know this. She heard me at first. I said, "Gee, that's a unique idea, but can it work? You're talking about two such disparate things being mashed up together." And I thought, it's going to be a hoot. It's going to be a wild ride, but I got to do it right. So, it looks good, and I was uncertain whether I was up to the task. I think I was. And, really, it's keeping in tradition with what Alexander and I have been doing up until now, because you look at Gunfight at Rio Bravo, Taken from Rio Bravo. Here we took identifiable icons of action cinema, whether it's Matthias Hughes or Cynthia Rothrock, etc., or Art Camacho as the fight coordinator, and put them in the Western, somewhat spaghetti Western context. If I can make that work, I can make this work. And it's sort of in keeping in that tradition of, taking two wildly unassociated ideas and putting them together and selling it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, you said yourself. I mean, look, we've been having a lot of martial arts in westerns, for even the longest time. We can go back to like Shanghai Noon with Jackie Chan, and then we even go back to Once Upon a Time in China and America with Jet Li. Where
and Red Sun with Charlie
Sun.
Bronson and Toshiro Mifune.
Yep. Oh, you can go back. Yeah, go back as far as over 50 years, and
Yep.
the mixture of East and West. I think it works well, and it's the first time I've seen sumo, in this capacity. Yeah, I think, quite frankly, it was a really good job, well done, on everyone's behalf.
Well, and it was based. I'll just say this one last thing. It was based on a true incident, because there in 1907 there was a contingent of sumos that came to this country to visit Teddy Roosevelt. That actually happened.
Yeah, and that's what blew my mind, because I didn't even know that Teddy Roosevelt was a martial arts enthusiast
He
until
was. Yeah.
seeing this movie, and I'm like,
Yeah.
mouth literally dropped. I'm like, oh wow, I did not know that. That's amazing to hear that he had this passion for martial arts, and he
He did.
gets, and that's just amazing, hands
And
down.
and how did you like Lee Dawson, who played Teddy in this
Oh
movie?
my God, he was like the spitting image. I thought I was actually looking at Teddy Roosevelt. He was like the spitting image of him.
Great credit to our makeup team on that one. Um, she was our lead artist on that day was great, and how she made him up. I mean, it was amazing, and he had the voice down and everything, and it was so much fun just watching him.
Yep.
Yeah, he was like literally the spitting image. And in the end of the movie, when you see the photos of actual President Theodore Roosevelt show up, this is when you realize, because you just saw Lee Dawson as Teddy Roosevelt, and all of a sudden you see those pictures, and this is when you realize that he's literally spot on. And like with his acting and the makeup, it was such an amazing transformation. And the makeup artist's name is Christina Goldberg. I've known her for many years, wonderful lady, and I've always known that she was exceptionally talented. But I have to say, she blew my mind that day because it was literally like magic, not like not just makeup, it's like literally magic. He transformed into another person in
Mm.
front of our eyes. And honestly, it was one of my favorite things in the movie, watching him uh, play Teddy Roosevelt, because it's one of my favorite historic figures to begin with, and I was very much delighted to see that.
Yeah, and Tatiana, hands down, you were amazing in this film too, because first of all,
Thank you.
you pulled off a great American accent. Like I couldn't even tell that you're actually Russian, but when I first heard your voice in the film and just your chemistry with Alex, it just speaks volumes for itself. Here you
Thank you
are,
so much.
potentially the love interest of the character, but you could see like he's only there to do business. He's only there to play games, but then, you could see that he starts to have a soft spot for your character, and then you practically turn him into the Terminator by the final reel, because once that final action set piece comes, you see Alex become like the Western version of the Terminator with the cigar and everything, which I had to admit I chuckled at a few times, but it's still like it worked for some, I don't know why, but it worked. And like I said, you were great in this movie too.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's always a team effort. It's easy to do a great job when you're surrounded by amazing, supporting, talented people who are there for you every step of the way. And I'm going to share this credit with my team, specifically with Joe is here. He's always super supportive of everything I do on set, and he always like lets me spread my wings and fly. Like literally, like I get to do so much under his supervision that I want. Like if I want to add a line or something, or like tweak something, I all it takes is just asking Joe, and he will take a moment, he will imagine it, and he will be like, "Yeah, I'm into it. I like it. Let's do it. Let's go with it." So a lot of it, because of that kind of approach, allows magic to really happen in the moment, because you have to have a direction, you have to have a script, you have to have a story, and you also have to look out for those magical moments of chemistry happening and allow them to happen, and allow those relationships on screen to evolve, because they're like literally living organisms, and live their own life on screen. But I can't claim credit for Alexander looking all badass in the Wild West, because, as you know, like he's a huge celebrity in Russia. He's like one of the most famous people there, and from like the very start of his career, probably due to his success in bodybuilding, he's a title holder for
Yeah.
Mr. Universe 3 years in a row. He, like he went and he won, and Arnold Schwarzenegger also is the holder of that title. And because of their kind of like similarity in looks, like a lot of times in the pictures of Alexander and Arnold Schwarzenegger, you will notice that they kind of look similar, like related. I always like noticed it, and then you have to also keep in mind that the crowd and the media have given them the nickname of the Russian Terminator.
Now, I did not know that, but
Uh-huh.
now it totally fits with this movie, especially.
Yeah.
So whatever he does, like literally, he could like literally do a Shakespearean play and still look like a Terminator. This is just the way it is. Like he built for it, you know. Like he has that intensity, which is I think one of the reasons why this ensemble works so well is because everybody brings like their unique something. Like for example, I always said Joe in this movie literally looks like a Bond villain, but in the Wild West. No, I kid you not. Like once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Like it's literally like a Bond villain traveled in the past, you know, like it's the United States, or like Professor Moriarty, you know, like he's got this like flair, you know, like he's a villain, but he's elegant. And like I love how those characters all stand out in that Wild West setting. None of them belongs there, so in a way they're kind of bonded, you know. Like Alexander looks like a Terminator. Joe is this, you know, amazing like Bond villain. You know, like there you have those, you know, Japanese guys, literally champions from Japan. They were literally playing themselves pretty much, you know, like Sybil, my character, also like doesn't look like she belongs in that setting. You know, like you have all those characters, and each one of them is so like unique and special. I really enjoyed Nick portraying the judge. Like that was a really complicated role as well. And I don't know. I'm so happy with the way everybody did. I'm so grateful to this team, like, and to our wonderful director and to Alexander and Andrew for this amazing, unique idea.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Joe, speaking of that, like I usually see you as good guys, and this is the first time I've ever seen you as a villain. And I gotta ask, man, what was that like going that 180 playing a villain this time around?
Well, I wanted to approach this guy just not as a standard villain, just a straight out villain. You know, I wanted to give this guy some levels of that you wouldn't normally see. And, you know, I wanted him to be in total command. And if you notice, he doesn't really do anything. He has his minions do it.
Yeah.
You know, the scene with the judge, what happens to the judge, he doesn't do it. One of his guys does it, you know, not to give too much away. But, you know, I saw this guy as sort of, you know, he was powerful. He had lots of land, and he had some connection with the money in this town, and he was just, quite frankly, he was a guy that was used to always getting his own way, and you know. But I tried to add some different touches in there, so he just wasn't straight ahead. Okay, this is the bad guy, and I want to see this guy dead. I wanted him to be like, this is the bad guy, and I hope people found him. Oh my God, he's really interesting. And that was the feedback when we had our screening a couple of Mondays ago um, here in town. I got a lot of nice compliments about it. You know, about, you know, that character was really interesting. And how did you like? Speaking of this, how did you like seeing Carrie Goodwin in? You know, we know how we've established her in the past,
Yeah.
and you know, you've
It
seen
was
her in, this is a different thing for her
Yeah,
completely.
this is, and what I liked about it was you said it yourself, you brought this level because when you first see him, he's looking for revenge for his brother, but
Yeah.
at the same time, he's got the humanistic side, like, you know, I think it's like he sometimes questions himself saying, well, what if I fail? What if I can't, you know, and I don't want to die either. You know, is there
Hmm.
something, do I have a plan B set in motion, you know, and not giving too much away? You know, you bring that, it's like at times you ask yourself that, like, it seems like you're totally like asking yourself, am I going to get revenge for my brother? Will I succeed? Because let's just face it, some of the guys, some of the minions you had weren't the sharpest tools in the shed, if you know what I
They,
mean.
they
So,
certainly weren't dead shots, some of them. Yeah, that's for sure. But I had an opportunity to do something in this, which I don't normally have the opportunity in my previous westerns, because this is set in a later period of the West. This is basically set after the West has been tamed, and it's a much quieter time. But there's different weapons, and I was able to incorporate some of those. In fact, Nick Bailey is sporting an actual 1897 Remington pump shotgun. This is the same shotgun that Bill Holden brandished in The Wild Bunch, another later Western, And I got to carry this beast,
nice.
which is a 1898 broom handle Mauser. It's pretty heavy. And I had a special holster made for it too. And it it was I've always wondered what it would be like wielding that thing in a movie, and I got to do it, and
That's
it was super
amazing.
fun.
That's amazing. And one thing I told Alex this, Tatiana, this is for you. I know that you do martial arts and all that stuff. And I don't know what it was, but in my mind at one point during that final battle sequence, I'm like, is she gonna fight in this movie? Like I questioned that at times, like, is she gonna take me on? Because I would have loved to see that.
Um,
But
that 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 was that's an interesting question because that's true. I usually portray strong characters, kind of like, Wonder Woman, Black Widow, like a woman who can take care of herself. And one of the reasons why I was excited about this project is because I got to explore the feminine side and show that a woman doesn't have to be masculine to be resilient, to be strong, to be powerful. The character that I got to play in this particular project, she has this quiet power about her, quiet resilience, because you don't see it at first, but then if you pay attention to the way that she lives her life, like you see her in the salon, at first you think like, oh, this is just a pretty lady at the salon, like nothing stands out to me about that. But then once you kind of like know a little bit more about the character, you understand that she is a clothing store owner, and the reason why she's in the salon dressed in her best outfits is because she's advertising her business every single day diligently. She goes out there, talks to people, and makes sales, like looking to make sales to keep her business going because she's out there in the Wild West all alone building her little empire, like as a like in the fashion industry. And you might ask, like, why would a woman like that end up in this kind of town? And the answer to that question I found in the scene where Alexander talks to the Japanese delegation, and they discuss the little towns, like that are rapidly growing in the Wild West. And I was thinking, like, yeah, that explains why she would own a store there, because this is where she doesn't have to compete with all those people like in New Orleans or San Francisco, which are already established at that time. And you are small fish in a big pond there. But in this town, you can be the first one, to establish a store like that and grow with your business. And you see, like in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of power in that,
mhm.
but it's a quiet power. It's not loud, And when the city gets attacked, I'm getting chills. When the city gets attacked, she doesn't flee. She's a woman, but she doesn't flee. She's feminine,
Yeah,
but she doesn't run away. She runs into her store. She's literally being told, hide, run away, like get out of danger. And she was like, this is all I have. I have to protect it. And she goes there, she finds her gun. You can tell she's not super skilled with the gun, but you also can tell that she's ready to use it if she has to. And she does, like
yeah,
she takes one
exactly.
guy down. So it wasn't the point to show a woman who can go hand in hand with men, like, and kick ass. The point was basically for me to explore the feminine side this time and show how a woman can be feminine and resilient at the same time.
Yeah, and you kind of did that too when you played the bounty hunter in the Rio Bravo films in your little cameo. You get to you had this great talk with Joe and Alex's characters in this one little small scene where you guys are by a campfire, and you get to show a little of that as well. So I'm kind of glad that that got expanded on with this role as well.
A little bit, but Helen, the character from taken from Rio Bravo, she is actually more of a badass. Like, she's a woman, she lives on the road. She will take bad guys down and like collect bounty for them, like dead or alive. Like, she doesn't really care like which way it's gonna be. She gives them that option. Like, she wasn't really like, you couldn't see her to the full extent, because it wasn't about her in that film.
Right.
Like, she was holding space for the story to develop in that one. But the character, the way that Joe and Alexander had her in mind, is actually, this dangerous woman, like, who can go hand in hand with men, and hopefully we'll be able to see it in the future. Um, but she is leaning more masculine, uh, because this kind of lifestyle would demand for that to be this way. Like, you can be a beautiful flower on the road, like hunting bad guys.
Yeah, you just totally read my mind there because I'd like to see Helen in a spinoff of Rio Bravo in a lead, kind of like the way they're doing now with John Wick and Ballerina. I would like to see Helen have her own little movie, just like and yeah, I hope Alex is watching this and hears this. So who knows if anything will muster up down the road? Who knows?
Well, as an insider to all this, there are plans. That's all I can tell you. That's all I
Oh, I'm
can
glad to
say.
hear that now.
All will be revealed.
uh,
That's that's awesome.
I love it how the anticipation is building up. You can feel the tension.
One thing that really struck out to me in the Wide West was, and I feel like this is a great scene because when Hiroki and Ichi have their little sparring, their little
Mm-hmm.
match, we
Mm-hmm.
got to understand how sumo works, like what's the rules behind it, and I think that was very important because this might be for someone who's never seen a sumo match in their life, or you know they kind of heard I've heard about it, but don't know exactly what the rules are behind the whole sport. So I like that little scene where right before the match, Kaz's character explains everything about how the
Yeah.
entire sumo world works, and I think for me that's important because as someone
You
who
had to have it. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen sumo a few times, but I still haven't. I had never grasped like how exactly it works. So to get that scene was very for me it was very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think it was, yeah, that was Andrew and his input. And he was very adamant that, we represent this in a, in, in all its detail, its ritual, its gamesmanship, its rules, regulations, everything. The salt being cast on the in the arena, things like this. So that's why he was key, that day when we filmed that, and we all actually went to a big sumo. Well, it was more than one match, Tatiana, right? I forget how many matches, but remember we went in to see them.
Sumo Open. It was Sumo Open. It was, yeah, it was uh, a big competition, yearly competition, annual.
Yeah, and
And
it
we
was fascinating. Yeah,
yeah, the four of us went. Alexander, Joe, and the lovely Carrie Goodwin. We all went there to see it and check out. This was my first time seeing a sumo match in my like in real life. Like, I'd only seen it on screen before, and it's really spectacular. Like, it really like does something to you. Like, when you witness so much power, like those giants clashing on that arena. Like, it's really spectacular.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it was certainly my first real introduction because the only the only exposure I had had, other than a couple of James Bond movies where there are sumos in it, like You Only Live Twice, appropriately, but was when I was a kid in Honolulu watching Japanese television. And I'd always watch the sumo matches on Japanese television.
Yeah, that was mine too. And then I also saw it in, oh God, I'm about to name this movie and I cannot believe it, but I saw it in the Toxic Avenger Part 2 where
Oh yeah,
there was an
yeah.
accident that almost had, like, he almost dies and he goes to a sumo gym and kind of it's like the way of the sumo heals him from his affliction, like the thing that almost killed him. And there's a scene where he's learning sumo, like Toxic Avenger learning sumo wrestling. So I was like, that's like my only exposure to it. And, and he did fight a sumo wrestler in one scene in that movie, besides before he goes to the gym. But, just to see that, that was like my only exposure. And also Japanese television, because we had it back in New York when I was growing up. So I was like, but to see it here in this movie and get the full details of how it works, I feel it's important, because now that it might give people a new respect for the sport, like
Sure,
people who
sure,
100%.
definitely,
yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like also like very important detail here is that the gentlemen who played sumo champions in the movie are actual real life sumo champions.
Yeah,
yeah,
Like they're like literally top elite. Like the description that is given to them in the movie, that they're like godlike level of celebrity in their own country, in their home
yeah,
country. This is literally what it's like in real life. They're among the top sumo champions in the world.
mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it like even more special, because it's based on sumo champions of the past, and sumo champions of the present are playing those
Yeah,
parts, and they did a great job, and it
they
wasn't
did.
easy. Because
yeah.
Joe, do you remember how hot it was when we were filming their part? Like
Oh
we
yeah.
were all like cooking on that set.
Well, and on these matches, they're not very long, but you think of the intensity of them, and here's two guys who weigh over 550 pounds each charging at each other. Okay, so we look at boxing matches here, and you go rounds. Well, the intensity of this thing is so huge that it boom, and it's 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 over. And
Hmm.
that's what was interesting always to me. But when you look at the intensity of these guys, that
And
that's
they're really
probably the
fast
reason.
too.
Yeah,
Like you would
Yeah,
not expect somebody that big to move that fast. They have like cat-like instincts. Like they're so quick.
totally, totally.
I was amazed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they remind me of Sammo Hung back in the day. A big guy in the Hong Kong movies. Jackie Chan's buddy, where
Oh yeah, yeah,
a big, like, 250-pound guy, but he does like air. He can do flips like they're nothing, like for a guy's his size. And I saw my back in the day when I saw that, my mouth used to be like, "Holy crap!" He's like, he should not be able to do that, but here he is doing all these backflips and somersaults, like, because of the opera school training. That
hmm
I mean, that's what, and yeah, these guys are really fast. And I like the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, they use different weapons, and I like the fact that one of them got to use a bow and arrow during the final fight scene. It was just pretty cool.
Yeah. Ichiko actually is he does archery
yeah,
in real life. Like he actually can shoot an arrow, really
yeah. That was
well. Like
really
he's a
good.
good archer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So, how long did shooting take on the film? And you mentioned the weather was so hot, but were there any other challenges you faced during filming?
Do you remember how many days? I don't know. We
I
could.
believe altogether it was about
There
a
was
week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ish, something like that. If we count like all the days, stack them together, it's gonna be probably like
well, we filmed it
uh
in we
12,
basically yeah in
11.
two segments though, because
Yeah, three.
we had a very short window to use the sumos within, and
Yeah, because President Roosevelt was shot separately, so technically three. It was just a smaller segment.
yeah, so
Yeah.
So it's
but we
Yeah. the weather was challenging most of the time. We only had like a few days that were perfect. When we filmed The President was a perfect day, and
Yep.
when we filmed some of the stuff in the town, like the weather was really, really wonderful, just lovely. And we were like, oh, why couldn't it be like that the whole time? Because
Yeah.
the rest of the time was really, really hot in the first segment when we were focusing on we needed to shoot the sumo guys, so the production, Joe, Alexander, and Andrew decided to focus on that during that time, and
Mhm.
then we came back to shoot the rest of us, and when we were shooting our parts, the weather was actually really cold in the beginning, so it was like either hot or cold, and then only by the end of the shoot we got perfect weather.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing to hear. So with that said, what's next for you guys?
Joe?
Well,
Joe, I know
um,
you got some stuff cooking.
wh- wherever wherever Mr. Nevsky tells me to go, I go. But I can probably bet that the next thing that we will have on board this year, I think, is the third part of the Rio Bravo trilogy,
Last
That would be
Heroes
so
of Rio
lovely.
Last
Bravo.
Heroes. That's a good bet. That's a
Okay.
really good bet. And I've got a few other things going on. I'm in the process of taking a book about Robert and John Mitchum,
Oh wow.
written by John Mitchum, and I'm working with John Mitchum's daughter to get this thing filmed as a limited series. So I'm working on that. I'm working on another project related to the Mitchum brothers called Songs of History, which is a sort of a series of all put together about 28 chapters about the great songs of America going back 200 years. The Battle Hymn of the Republic, Aloha Oi, The Streets of Laredo,
Oh wow.
The Dreary Black Hills, Shenandoah, etc. And I'm in the process of actually putting that one together right now in Texas. And I've got a few people associated with it, some of the great legendary Western actors like Barry Corbin, Buck Taylor, Bruce Boxleitner. Anyway, so
Oh,
I'm working on that. I'm working on that.
fingers crossed.
I'm also writing my first crime caper movie called Inside Out.
Oh wow.
More on that to come. And
That's
last
awesome.
but not least, shameless plug section. Don't forget barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, A
There we
Prayer for the
go.
Damned and Other Tales of the West. And if you didn't get it, you missed Father's Day, you could still make it a late Father's Day gift.
There we go.
Just like that. So, and that's what's going on with me.
Oh wow. That's awesome. I'm glad you're keeping busy and doing all that. That's awesome. And that's cool that you did your first horror film with Night of the Caregiver. Now you're playing your first crime caper. So this is going to be quite interesting.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But watch out for Last Heroes of Rio Bravo.
Awesome. What about you, Tatiana? What's next for you?
Well, I really hope that Last Heroes of Rio Bravo does end up being the next step, because I am very excited to see where those characters are going to go and how they're going to develop. I am very fascinated with character arcs, and it's really interesting to me to see how a person starts here and how they end up there. This is the whole reason why I started uh, just focusing on my acting career, is because, like to live the life of adventure. And I've always been interested in human psychology and, human psyche. And I really hope that we revisit the Rio Bravo series, because I honestly fell in love with my character Helen,
We
and
will. Yeah.
I want to see her blossom, and like I want to see where she's gonna end up going. And of course, despite of however much I enjoyed to be all feminine and wear beautiful dresses, I still love a good action scene, so I really do hope that I will get to put my fighting skills to use again and just have some fun with it. And there is another movie that is in the final stages of post-production right now. I can't really say much about it, but it's an action film and I play the lead in it. And I'm not going to name it because I don't know what's like what kind of title it's gonna end up being. But stay tuned and something really awesome is coming your way. Like this is probably my best action of my action career so far. I had to train like a mad person for this film, and we will see. Like it should be out pretty soon now.
Great.
So
That's
I'm gonna be
awesome to hear.
making
Yeah,
another
I
one.
actually what I told Alexander, like I'm hoping to see Tatiana in the lead of an action movie. He goes, "Yeah, you just wait. He just wait. I'm gonna have her tell you." He pretty much say, just wait for it." I'm like, "Okay." So like, awesome. Now I'm glad to hear that. So I'm gonna be on. That's gonna be on my radar at this. Everything's gonna be on my radar at this point, hands down.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having us. And you are so delightful to talk to. Really appreciate this interview.
Yes, and we really appreciate, Alexander and I appreciate your constant support. I know it's not easy to, do this that you do, but we appreciate it and very much.
Well, everyone, the Wide West is on Xumo Play right now. Definitely check this movie out. If you like westerns, you like sumo, you like the Eastern meets Western, you got to see this movie hands down. And once again, Joe and Tatiana, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Thank you,
Thank
my
you
friend.
so much for all your support.
Well, guys, stay awesome as always.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.